trickling in, I think maybe we will begin, and I want to welcome you all to the annual Women's Health Forum. And it's so heartening to see so many friends and neighbors come and show their support for such important issues. Believe it or not, we're now in our second decade of this event, and I think it's been very, very successful. And I sincerely want to thank Barbara Bishop, I think, who has helped see this event grow year after year after year. Barbara's not even here to thank, but we'll have to let her know. I also want to introduce some other folks here today. We have from the Winthrop Senior Center, Kathy Dixon, who is here. I thought I saw her. Steve Fielding from the Revere Senior Center. We have from the school committee, first of all, a member of the school committee, candidate for council president, Ron Vecchia. From the school committee, Tino Capobianco. Town Council, Linda Calla. And candidate for council president, Jeff Turco. We are really fortunate tonight to have some real fabulous speakers. Jody Ann Thompson from 7 News. Valerie Giglio, an advocate and attorney and now an author, I guess you could say, Valerie, from Revere. And Dr. Jackie Fantas of the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center. And I sincerely want to thank the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center for, again, generously donating the flu shots and for being our partners here this evening. Thank you very much. And also thank you to the Commonwealth Clinical Services for providing blood pressure readings here this evening, and I hope many of you took advantage of that. Me, I don't like to see what my blood pressure is, especially after I leave the State House. We also have representatives from a variety of health and wellness participants from all over the region, and I want to thank you all sincerely for your participation. There's also one other thing I'd like to say before we proceed. I'd like to take a moment, if I may, to remember and to recognize a woman who was sort of the heart and soul of this event for many years. She meant so much not only to me, but obviously for all of us here today, and we're very fortunate to have her husband here today, Jim Williams, and that is Nancy Williams. Let's not forget Nancy.
I promised Nancy would carry on, folks.
And as I mentioned before about Nancy, she would always joke as she was sitting next to me, and she would say to me, which she would definitely say, I think this year, why do you always bring in those news anchors who are in great shape and whatnot, and whatnot. But this year's event, we had our breast cancer walk, actually, in honor of Nancy Williams, by the way. And it's so interesting that the fact that tonight we have the host of that event, who's none other than Jody Ann Thompson, and it's so fitting that I really have the opportunity to introduce her now. I had the opportunity to meet with her, I don't know, maybe about a month or two ago, and I can tell you what a wonderful person she is, and a person not only who's extremely well read and whatnot, but really a person, I think, who really cares about making sure that they do right in terms of the Boston, what's happening in Boston and the surrounding areas. She happens to be a 3-time award-winning journalist, which is 3 times more than I've ever won anything. She joined Channel 7 in June of 2015 after working in several cities around the country, including Phoenix, Arizona. But in just a relatively short period of time, I'd have to say that I think this young lady has made such a big impact in Boston news. In other words, I think what you're going to see is that she's going to become a star in our city. So it's my pleasure to really welcome to the podium to say a few words, and I really want to thank her because the fact that she should be working at Channel 7. So I'm not sure if I'm doing her a favor or not. Maybe that's where that would be a lot easier for her as opposed to having to come back and forth. But she was nice enough to agree to do this tonight. But please give a warm welcome to Jody Ann Thompson.
I think I got a little teary-eyed listening to that intro. It's very sweet. Thank you so much for saying all those nice things about me. And thank you guys for letting me be here tonight. It's my first year. You guys have been doing this for 2 decades. So like you mentioned, I work at 7 News. It's Jody Ann Thompson, and I work during the evening. So I anchor the news from 4 to 5, 5:30 to 6, 6:30 to 7, and 9 to 10. And then I do stories in the other newscasts we have on in between those newscasts. So don't worry, you don't have to remember that. Even my mom still calls and asks when I'm going to be on TV. And that's really, I have to tell her almost every day. Okay, so since this is my first year being here, and I'm relatively new to the area of Boston, I thought I would give you a little bit of information about myself, right? And I'm going to be very honest with you, haven't been to Winthrop yet. I know, I thought, I don't think I should admit that, but I think transparency is key, right? So I did a little tiny bit of research about Winthrop, and then I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. So it's a funny little juxtaposition I have here for you, and that is that I grew up in a very small rural town in Arkansas. Show of hands, who knows where Arkansas even is? Oh, thank you. I usually have to remind people it's near Texas, the really big state. Not a lot of reasons for you to go there unless you probably were raised there, have family there. So the town is called Natural Dam, Arkansas. What you see is what you get. There's a little dam that's more like a waterfall, and it's named after that. I lived on a 1-mile dead-end dirt road on a small horse farm. So a whole lot going on there, guys. The reason I tell you that is because at last check, the census there said the town population was actually, can you guess, speaker?
400.
Okay, he's got a really good guess. He said 450 if you couldn't hear him. 369 people. So that was done within the last calendar year. And I looked up the population here of Winthrop. And so you guys are rocking about 17,000 and some change. 18, he said 18,000 people in Winthrop. Winthrop, I learned also, was a peninsula, which is really cool, right? Am I right? And you're about 1.6 square miles. So really quick, harsh math. If everyone in my town were here and showed up in that amount of space, we'd have about 12 people in attendance tonight. So that's kind of a little background on how I grew up, and was instilled with a lot of hard work ethics, and was taught to always look out for your neighbors and to do the right thing by yourself. And that's what I try to do as a journalist in every city and town that I go to. And that's why I think it's so important to be involved in things like this tonight, to meet each and every one of you and to hear your stories. And to be able to hopefully have you turn over to Channel 7 for your news from time to time. So we'll see if we can win some of you guys over if you're not already. And if you do watch, we really, really do appreciate it. All right, so something else that I've learned in my travels, and I'll tell you a little bit about what brought me here, and I'll make it quick. Out of college, which I went to the University of Arkansas, I moved to Spain, which was sort of random for someone from a little town of Arkansas to move to Spain. I got an opportunity to teach English there, and I thought it would be a wonderful thing. So I was in Madrid, Spain, and then I got my first job in TV news in a small town again, Casper, Wyoming. You guys ever been to Wyoming? Casper's sort of like, oh, there you go, thank you. Casper's sort of down by Laramie, if you know the state at all. Beautiful state, not a lot going on there either. And then I went to Phoenix, Arizona, like you mentioned, then off to Kansas City, Missouri, and then the job brought me here to Boston. In TV news, a lot of times you don't really get to choose where you go. You sort of go where the job takes you, and you do your very best everywhere you are. But in that process, you learn a lot about a lot of different people and different people's perspectives and how what matters to people. And one of the things as a new journalist, when you hit the market and then you're on TV all of a sudden, is you better not say the town names wrong. And when you're new to New England and grew up with a Southern accent, and then you're plopped on television in Boston, it's not always the easiest task, right? So I think for a lot of you, saying the names is very natural, especially if you grew up in the area. Shout some names to me you think would be tough if you weren't from here. Give me a couple of examples. Worcester, right? My gosh, you guys, I know English pretty well. I taught English to students in Spain as a second language and to business professionals in Madrid, and I thought I knew it, but then I couldn't say Worcester. I also did a live report in Billerica one night, and I spent more time trying to memorize how to say the name than I was worried about the rest of the story. And another good one, Gloucester. That one will get you. And then Winthrop. It's not Winthrop, right? So on my way over here, I said to the photographer, well, I've been saying this, and I'm pretty sure, I'm 99.9% sure I'm right. It's Winthrop, right? He goes, yes, you're right, it's Winthrop. So do I get an A+ for saying Winthrop right at least tonight? Okay, thanks. And like I said earlier, I really don't take myself too seriously. I think in what we do, it's very, very important, but I think it's also very important to stay humble and to know where you came from and to remember that none of us are too big for our britches at any point in our lives, right? That's an expression that I learned from my grandmother back down south. And so when I first started here, I was asked to fill in on a morning shift for a while. And of course, when you're new in a big market, you're going to say yes, and how far and how high, and I'd love to. So 3 months I spent filling in on a morning shift. I'm not a morning person. I'm definitely a night owl. And so I'm on about 3 hours of sleep because my body's not really wanting to make the adjustment just yet. I'm doing several hours of news, and thank you for dealing with me. Of all things, I've had a cold for a few weeks. So I have this weird tickle in my throat. I apologize. So I'm on very few hours of sleep. I'm very new to the market, and this word Lemonster comes up in the prompter. And I had a moment, you guys. I was seeing the letters, and I had told myself in advance that that was going to come up and that I could say it, I knew how to say it, and it did not come out right. And it didn't come out right the first time or the second time or the third time, maybe even not the fourth time. And then I finally got it out. And sadly, it was a really serious story, so you really hate to do that. It's very embarrassing to mess up a name and make yourself a distraction almost from the seriousness of that story you're reading. So I felt very embarrassed. It's all happening on live television. You just sort of have to move on. You can't let it keep bothering you all day, or then you'd continue to mess up all day. So I was really embarrassed, and then I moved on, and I thought, well, hopefully everyone will forgive me. I'm new, and I'm very tired right now. And then I got online and saw someone actually did not want to let me forget it. They made a video of it, and then they tweeted it to me, if any of you use Twitter. So one thing I have also learned in the business is that it's important to have a thick skin and to learn to sort of like water on a duck's back, let things roll off. But if I ever do anything like that, I really am sorry. And I don't mean to mess up, but we do. We're not perfect. And if anything, it just makes you a much stronger person, right? A little behind the scenes of what happens when you're a local TV broadcaster. Another thing is we live in a very stressful environment in TV news, especially at this level. A lot of things change. They change quickly, and you have to be willing to accept that. You have to be smart, because if there is breaking news all of a sudden, you better know what you're talking about, and the facts are important, and you better be able to roll with it. But most importantly, you have to look calm on camera, even if maybe you don't feel calm. So that's one of the keys is stress management. And I will say in this format that one of the things that I learned growing up that I think is very important for all of us to remember is to exercise and to eat right. All of these things are key in managing your stress. And so I'll just give you a couple of quick things that I do. My dad and I did karate together for years when I was younger, so we used to run together and do all kinds of things. So you'll see me out on the Esplanade. I live over in that area. Running, biking, or any type of activity, very important. So I'll just reiterate that. I told the doctor who's here, thank you for being here, because I am in no shape or form offering medical advice. But just as a working professional, I do think it's very important. Also, I mentioned I grew up in Arkansas, and we had a garden. So growing up, we did not have a lot of money at all. But we ate very well because we had fresh vegetables from the garden, and we were always asked to help in the garden, of course. And so now I have to go buy organic vegetables, and they're very expensive. So I really appreciate my parents making sure that even though we didn't have a lot of money, we ate right and we were healthy. And I've tried to carry those habits with me as an adult. To this day, I think it's very important to make time for those things, and it can be difficult when we're busy, right, to let those things slide. So just a little reminder, that's how I try to manage my stress, and this little reminder for all of you here to please always remember those things, that your diet and exercise really counts, and that it's very important. I'll leave you on this note, and if anybody has a question, I'd be more than happy to answer it if you would like to. They set up a microphone for you here, so if there is anything you're just dying to know about what goes on at 7 News, please come down and ask. But I'll leave you with this, and it's another funny story from Arkansas, and that is when it was peak season for the garden, we grew lots of peas, and this is a true story. If you were going to have any television time at night, you couldn't just sit and watch television, you had to also be shelling peas. And so you could shell a couple of gallons of peas through about 1.5 hour sitcom back home if you were pretty good. You got pretty fast at it. So that would be my last little tidbit for the night. I guess my parents knew what they were doing. Nowadays, if I am doing anything that's a little bit more idle, like watching a show or something, you can take the opportunity to do a couple of squats or do some push-ups or do something kind of healthy while you're at this other task. And you didn't hear it here, but sometimes in commercial breaks, I've been known to do walking squats through the newsroom. You take the opportunity when you have it. I'll leave you on that pea story, and I really appreciate you listening and obliging all my Arkansas stories for the evening. If you do have a question, please come over here and ask, or I can probably just hear you if you wanted to ask anything. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. It was a real pleasure to be with you this evening, and I'll be on again at 9 o'clock if any of you are home and like to watch, or if not, tomorrow, 4, 5:30, 6:30, 9 o'clock, and the next day, 4, 5:30, 6:30, 9 o'clock. Thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate it. Did anybody have a question? I can probably hear you if you just want to holler it out, but if not, that's fine. We have some other great speakers. Oh, come on, guys. Don't any of you have a question? Yes, sir.
What has been like to, what has been the most interesting story that you've had in Boston, number one, and number two? What has it been like to sort of cover some of our weather during the winter?
That's a good question.
First of all, most interesting.
Okay. In case you didn't hear him, he asked what the most interesting, he had a 2-part question, like any good press conference. So he said, what's been one of the most interesting stories? It's hard, it's always hard when you're talking about stories because a lot of the stories we cover are very negative, they're bad, it's usually horrific news. And I've always said that when I meet people, especially as a reporter, that you're usually meeting these people on the worst days of their lives because their home is burned or they've lost a loved one or there's been a bad accident or something's happened. We always have to remember that. And I always try to be very delicate with that, and that I'm asking them about what's happening because it's important for us to share people's stories, but at the same time offer that sensitivity that matters. The story that's made the biggest impact on me, Mr. Speaker, happened when I first got here, and that was Baby Doe, if all of you are familiar with that. Thank you. I feel like we have a very well-informed audience tonight, and I really appreciate that. But little Bella Bond's body washed up on Deer Island, and that was horrible. Just to break, we cover a lot of bad news, and you have to be a professional, but it doesn't mean we're not human. You have to be very careful not to let it get to you too much, or we would then be very negative people. But there are stories like that touch you and never leave you. This poor little child did not deserve anything that she got in this, and if you want to go read up on a little bit more of what happened, but basically a little child was found, and she had been killed and put in a bag and thrown in the water. That was really, really hard to cover, and it made a huge impact on me. And I'll never forget when we finally found out her identity and then started to hear more about her story. So, just got to live by the golden rule and always look out for other people in this life, right? We have to make up in good ways that other people fail us in bad ways, I think. That's the only way I know to cope with some of the negative that we see. Then he asked me how it is covering the winters coming from Arkansas. If we got a little dusting of snow in Arkansas, and I mean a dusting, it was a snow day and everything was closed. So they taught me when I came here that there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothes. true. Wet feet for hours is not good. I am walking distance from the station. I did that. I was very strategic because I didn't want to tell my boss I was late because of weather, not being able to drive or not be able to get a train or something. So I walked to work, but there are days where I literally walk uphill to work in the snow. So I can tell my children that I did that. When I first started, I reported 3 days a week, and I anchored on the weekends. So I was out in the snow reporting. I've been promoted since January, where I'm in the studio all the time now. So I thank God every day that I'm not out in it. I'm very grateful, and I knock on wood that hopefully it stays that way. But I guess for a while it's really pretty, and I still actually enjoy it. I think it's really nice. I think it's fun. I just don't want to see anyone get in an accident or, lose power or have struggles. But for the most part, I'm still in that phase where I think the snow is really cool and it's really pretty because I didn't grow up around it. So I think sometimes it's like living in a postcard here. It's so beautiful. I really am in love with Boston. I'm not just saying that because I'm on your television, but I hope to stay here for a very long time. And I think the city is just beautiful. So I'm still in love with the winters. Maybe come and ask me in February or March how I feel about it. Great question. Thank you for that. And I also have really long-winded answers. If you didn't hear her, she said it was a bit of a culture shock coming to Boston, the way we talk, she said, our sports teams. It's a great question. What do you mean by the way you talk? First of all, do you hear my Southern accent? Can you hear it? Okay. Like a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is it? Not that bad? Okay, I'm working on it. I don't want to sound too much like a foreigner to you guys. But I hear yours, too. I think it's cute. I love it. I love listening to the dialects. As a teacher in Spain, the children there used to hear my Southern accent. These children were learning their curriculum in their native tongue of Spanish and in English and in French. And they made fun of me for my Southern accent. Like, I will never escape this Southern accent, will I? I'm working on it, but there are times where I'll hear a really thick Boston accent, and I just notice it. I think it's cute. I like it. I really do. It's fun for me to experience people in all different ways of life and shapes. Siri's talking to me. That's weird. Your other part of your question was sports teams. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, you guys love everything about all of your teams. And you learn that real fast. As a matter of fact, on my interview, someone asked me, how much of a sports fan are you? And this is going to determine part of whether we hire you or not. You need to be a sports fan. I think it's great. Why not? I grew up in a town, in a state that doesn't have a pro team. So I think it's great. Also because I can have an allegiance to your pro teams here and not make anyone at home upset because I can still call the Hawks on an SEC game day. It's great for me. It works out perfect. Nice question. Thanks. Anybody else have a question? I know we have the other. Am I taking up too much time? Okay. Okay, thank you. As long as he says I'm okay. Yes, sir.
Can you tell me how you decided to be broadcasting?
Yes, of course. Where are you from? From Winthrop? Okay, just making sure. So this young man in the back here from Winthrop asked if you didn't hear him. I'm not sure if you guys can hear everyone. How I just sort of got started in broadcasting. And I would like to say that as a little child, I was, practicing being a reporter. That was not the case. I was a super senior. It took me 5 years to get through an undergrad, which I paid for. So every class I didn't really need to take was very, expensive. But it took me a while to figure out actually what I wanted to do in life, and that's because at our dinner table growing up, we talked about religion and we talked about politics. We talked about the taboo topics. My family taught me that was important to be in the know. But I also love to teach, so I thought I wanted to be a teacher. My older brother, who's a huge influence on me, is an engineer. I thought, well, we'll do well, and I'll be able to support myself if I'm smart and can do an engineering job. So I took engineering for physics and then decided that the College of Arts and Sciences was calling my name. I didn't like that class. So it took me a while, actually, to figure out, and I'll tell you one of the ways that did was because I was an intern in Capitol Hill, and I've always loved politics. And I was interning for my congressman at the time, who's now a senator, and I would follow around his press person, and I learned how important these people were. And being sort of the gatekeeper of information, for being the watchdogs of the government, and for being the voice of the people. Not to sound too cliche, but it's powerful. And I learned that on the Hill. And I went back home to Arkansas and decided that I was changing my major and that I would be a journalist. And I never looked back. Been very, very happy. And I know in life, I think Confucius or someone said this, or I don't really know who, but the saying goes, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I firmly believe that, and I hope that other people have had the same experience, because I really do love what I do, and I think it's a blessing. Thank you for the question. I'm going to let the other people talk now. I think I've talked long enough. Thanks for listening.
And I know that you have to leave to get back to do your job, but I just want to present you with this citation. Show this to your boss, and maybe he or she won't mind in terms of your being here today, this evening. But it's congratulations to Jody Ann Thompson from the Massachusetts House of Representatives, recognition of your commitment and dedication to the people of New England, and as the keynote speaker at the 2017 Winthrop and Revere Women's Health Forum. And it's given this 26th day of October, 2017 at the State House, and it's signed by the Speaker and offered by the Speaker of the House, Robert A. DeLeo. Thank you so much, and congratulations to you.
I really don't know what to say, but I have to say thank you so much. It really means the world to me to meet all of you, and I've actually never had anything like this. So it'll go on my wall. Thank you so much for letting me be here and be a part of your lives, everyone. Good night.
Oh, well, that's understandable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's interesting that Jody Ann had brought up the Bella Bond, which I'd have to say was one of those moments, I think, probably as speaker that I many times will think of, to the point where I keep a picture of Bella from the Mass that we held here in town on my desk each and every day as a reminder in terms of what my job should be all about, and to make sure that I watch over the young people of our community. So it was interesting that she had brought that up, and it just brought that memory to me. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you, our partners here today, and the folks who provide the flu shots here. And I hope I don't get sick from the flu shots, but we'll see. But I want to introduce Dr. Jackie Fantis of East Boston Neighborhood Health Center for a couple of words.
Speaker DeLeo, our Winthrop neighbors, thanks for always inviting East Boston Neighborhood Health Center to this event. I, too, am fairly new to Boston, but this is my third event, and I can't believe it already. I am from Illinois. I grew up in a very small town in southern Illinois, so yeah. No, you guys all have accents. I don't, but I really appreciate being here tonight, and I'm very, very happy to represent the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center. I'm actually the Chief Medical Officer at the Health Center, and also a family doc here at our Winthrop Neighborhood Health. And there's a couple of folks here that I would hope would come up and join me. I'm going to totally embarrass them here tonight. But we have a couple of facilities here in Winthrop. We have both our Winthrop Neighborhood Health that I'm going to talk a little bit about, and our PACE program on Sturgis Street that's been there for quite a while. And we are now celebrating our whole year. We've been open for a whole year over on Main Street. Can't believe it. It's been the fastest year ever. And we have a tremendous family medicine team that I would like to introduce. We have our nurse practitioner, Katie Bonzi. she takes care of my family. So, so she comes highly recommended. She has an open panel, so yes, so please join us. Our newest addition to the team is Dr. Matusi Chalumi. He just joined us a couple of weeks ago, and he is expanding our care. And then I don't think I need to introduce this person, but I think everybody in the town of Winthrop knows Ronnie Moore, and keeps us very honest at the health center. And just to talk a little bit, and there's one person that's not here, Dr. Lilia Cardenas. She is also a family doctor at our Winthrop Neighborhood Health. And so we are really advancing our teams, and we are, all of our panels are open. And I would like to just talk a little bit about how we provide health care at our health center. We do what's called open access scheduling, so we really try to get everybody in the day that they call. So, you know, call us for your flu shot, for your physical, for your women's health visit, for your sickness, your sprained ankle, what have you, and we'll take good care of you and provide that service on the same day. You know, we would love you to come and join us and be your primary care provider. We do full scope family medicine. We see you when you're newborn. We take care of you through childhood. We take care of you through your prenatal care. We take care of you through adulthood and geriatrics. So we do the full scope of care at our Winthrop Neighborhood Health. There's a couple of things that our program does provide also that Ronnie does. One of the things in primary care, you have to really take good care of your high-risk patients. You can't let them be at home and not be paid attention to. You got to really pay good attention to those folks and call them and be on top of those folks. And Ronnie does a fabulous job with that and keeps our high-risk folks taken care of and really, like I said, does a really good job at that. And everybody knows Ronnie. Everybody knows that Ronnie's going to call them. And that's what's kind of fabulous about being a small health center here is that anytime Ronnie calls, you know, it's always Ronnie. It's always her. So very exciting. And then there's a couple of medical assistants that we have, Blanca Flores, Evelyn Ortiz. I wish they were here tonight with us because if you're missing your visit or if you need a visit, they're going to call you. So you got to really keep track of your folks. And so I think we do a really good job of that. And we would invite everybody to the Winthrop Neighborhood Health. And I appreciate you letting me come here and talk about that. I also, some of our PACE folks are up here in the audience also, if you want to wave, you know. Over on Sturgis Street, we have our PACE program. That's our program for all-inclusive care of the elderly. It's the best program out there. We all need a PACE program as we age. That is filling. It's getting fuller. Speaker DeLeo helped us open, or we're getting ready to open, or build and then open a new facility in Revere also. So thank you, Speaker, and so our PACE program is really growing. So we're very happy to partner here with Winthrop. And we providing care, working with the senior center, the farmers market, and we just really appreciate partnering together. So come visit us at the health center, and we'll show you around, and hopefully you'll join us as a patient. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I appreciate that. It's now my pleasure to introduce Valerie Giglio. What'd you like to be called, by the way? I should have a Giglio's. Okay, all right. Valerie is an attorney. As a matter of fact, she's an attorney who I had the pleasure of working with for some years. And she's also a vocalist from Revere, who actually experienced a life-changing medical event. I think some of you may have seen it on, I'll say NECN, or since she's gone, I can mention NBC Channel 10 as well. And recently, I think in Billboard magazine.
Well, because I have something coming in consideration, so I'm in Billboard this week, actually.
You're going to win a Grammy?
No,
Oh, all right, okay. All right.
in consideration, so I have this week's Billboard, there's a little thing.
You're in consideration for a Grammy?
Consideration for nomination process.
Oh, nomination. Okay, whatever. I'm sorry. I should. Okay. But some of you probably saw that story, and I can tell you when we were working in the office when we got news of Valerie's having a stroke, it sort of hit home to all of us in the office at the time, because, you know, quite frankly, what you see, I mean, she's in great shape. She's always been in great shape. I think she always ate the right things, unlike the rest of us, and so that was the last news that we had expected. But she's now back to singing, and she recently published a book, Singing in My Own Key, A Vocalist Triumphed Over Stroke. So it's my pleasure, really, to introduce to you, to talk a little bit about her inspiring story, Valerie Giglio. Valerie?
So it is a pleasure for me, an honor for me to be here, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, really for inviting me here. And let me tell you a little bit about my story. So I am an author, I am an attorney, I am a professional singer, and actually the author thing just came about because of what I'm about to tell you. I was a healthy, very healthy 42-year-old in 2014 when I just looked the wrong way. I turned my neck too quickly in bed to look at the alarm clock one morning, and it broke both arteries leading to my brain. It's called a vertebral artery dissection, and I walked around in severe pain for a few days, just thinking that I had to go to the chiropractor, something that I have to do. And I woke up a few days later with a brainstem stroke. A blood clot traveled to my brain during those few days, and I was completely paralyzed on my left side, seeing double, extremely dizzy, and I was in Mass General and in Spalding Rehab for a couple of months, and then in outpatient for a year. I had to relearn how to walk and how to use my left side, and I also lost my singing voice and my musical ability, completely gone. Where I will never know for sure if the vocal fold was paralyzed because, you know, they've got other things to think about when I'm in the hospital. Obviously, that wasn't really what they were focused on, but I have, with the help of Mass General, the renowned Voice Center, where it was treated Adele and Julie Andrews and all those people, Steven Tyler and so forth. You might have seen that on TV. They helped me also get my voice back, and the Real School of Music in Burlington as well. And so I wasn't able to speak for more than a few words at a time. I didn't lose my voice in the stroke, but I had no stamina. I had absolutely no, I was breathless, and I would practically almost pass out just by speaking to people that would come and visit me. I had to stay in bed for a few days after that. But I had always been a person that I was a dancer for many years, and I went to the gym, and I was even a fencer at that time. I played instruments. I played violin for many years, a little bit of guitar, piano, and so I couldn't use my left hand at all. I had nothing. The music was completely gone, and my voice was reduced literally from the day I had that stroke. I was performing with a professor from Berkeley College of Music at a Chick Singer Night, a big event that we were going to have a few days later. And I went from that to having literally no voice, just like that. No skills, nothing. Screaming. And in fact, my mother, who's here tonight, can attest to my screaming unintentionally screaming in Spalding Rehab, just trying to sing. And I would say to my nursing staff, oh, I was a singer, and they'll say, oh yeah, of course, yeah, that's right, And actually, I released 2 CDs, and I've been a member of the Recording Academy, the Grammys, for 5 years. And I would go to the Grammy Awards, I'd walk the red carpet, and I would tell this to staff, and they'd be like, yeah, okay, So, and it was, so I was in a wheelchair for some months, and then then I had extensive occupational and physical therapy, and then I graduated from a wheelchair to a brace and a cane, and then limping a little bit, and then nothing, and now I'm completely back to where I was before. I would say maybe, I have a few little things, but I'm pretty much, they've returned me from 0 to almost 100%. And so, I had to relearn how to sing again, note by note, literally. And I just didn't want anything to stop me. I wasn't going to give up. I was not going to lose at 42 years of age my entire life. Everything, I couldn't drive, I lost my license, I couldn't do anything that I had done before. My life was just, it was taken away like a thief in the night. It was just in a second. And so then I decided, I was lying in the hospital, and before this stroke, I was getting ready to go to Italy for a summer music program, and I said, I'm going to go back next year. I'm going to go back the following summer, because a stroke happened in June, so I couldn't obviously go that summer. I said I was going to go back the next summer with no assistance. I was just going to walk in and perform and do what I had to do, and that's what I did. I learned, and that was a goal of mine, and I started performing. I performed my first show, I would say probably 4 or 5 months after the stroke. And my voice was nothing to write home about at all. And they had to put a chair on stage for me, and I could only manage 1 song. And I did a little low open mic night, and that made me feel like I was a singer still. And that I still, I said, oh, maybe, I still have some hope. I can come back, and that's great. And then I actually went rock climbing 6 months after the stroke with Spalding Rehab. And it was terrifying. I will never do it again. But, I did that, and I was excited that I had done that. I would never have done that before the stroke, and I don't think I'm ever going to do that again. So, so, I set goals for myself that, I would recover, and that, I just keep doing a little bit at a time, because the molehills turn into a mountain. Because, at first I couldn't see beyond the state I was in. I didn't know if I was going to walk again. I didn't know if I was going to sing again. And I was like, well, I guess, maybe, sometimes, the thought would cross my mind, I guess my old life is over, and, maybe I'll just go in a nursing home, I guess, at 42 years old. And, my husband was so supportive of me, and then I felt bad. I said, here's my husband here is taking care of me, and we're in our very, very young, late 30s, early 40s, and this is going to be his life, taking care of somebody that had a stroke and doing that. But it was wonderful. He stayed with me every single night in rehab. He became sort of like their hotel guest, I guess, if you want to call it that. And so I also promised myself that I would try to get into Berklee College of Music. Now, that was an impossible feat, because if you know anything about Berklee, it's like the most prestigious music school and one of the most prestigious in the world. And so I said, because that was something I wanted to do before the stroke. And so I said, okay, I'll give myself a couple of years, and then I'm going to get into Berklee. I don't know how I'm going to accomplish this, but I'm going to do it. So that's what I did. And I just got into Berklee, I got accepted, and I start next year. And so, thank you. So, thank you so much. So I also decided to write a book about this experience, because it was so bizarre and everything that went along with it. And I also wanted to prove to people that, stroke is not a death sentence, and that life is what you make of it. Even if you don't have a stroke, maybe if you're struggling with some other diseases, ailments, anything that you're facing, any adversity at all that maybe you think that it's impossible, that you can't get through it, well, you can. And did I have to make adjustments? Of course I did. I made adjustments. I did things like putting the chair on the stage, or there's certain things, maybe walking with my cane, or anything, the way I held bottles, or, something I'd have to just cheat a little bit with the way I picked items up, but I made accommodations for myself, and that's what I did. And it was just, after you keep going and going, then maybe you don't need them anymore. So it's just a blip on the radar is what one nurse told me in ICU, and that's what it is, a blip in the radar. And it just, I'm proof that it's not true that things stay the same, that you can't get through the dark times, because you absolutely can. And so on the other side, it's glorious. Now, I started to write a book when I had one hand. I started to type in from my hospital bed. And I had that book published in 2016. It's called Singing in My Own Key, A Vocalist's Triumph Over Stroke, where I talk about the first year of my stroke and everything that happened, and the recovery, and going to Italy, and how that helped me, because when I went back to Italy the next year, I never thought I would be flying again. Here I am going to another country by myself. I mean, I would never, ever, I couldn't even get out of the bed. I mean, I think my family thought I was crazy for even suggesting that I would go the following year, but I did it. And I started writing this book. And then it was published, and it's really been wonderful. I've been very, very lucky. I've gotten excellent reviews. And then I started working with a friend from the summer Berkeley program, and he said, well, why don't we do the audiobook version? And so I said, well, that's great. Now, for me, that was a huge feat, because I could not speak. As I was saying, I couldn't speak for more than a few words at a time at first. I couldn't swallow at first. I couldn't, it was very difficult for me. And so now I had to do an entire audiobook, which takes a long time. I mean, the book is 7 hours, but it takes like triple that amount to be recording it in the studio. So we did it, and we released it this summer. And then we decided, well, you know what? The Grammy Awards has an audiobook category. It's called Spoken Word, where you got all these famous people put in their audiobooks or whatever. I said, hey, let's do it. What do we got to lose? So that's where we're at. And we submitted an entry, and this week in Billboard magazine, my picture is there, and the entry is in there. So we'll just see what happens. Maybe I'll be considered, maybe I won't. But you know what? At least for me to even be there, I'm just very, very excited. Thank you. Now I can play my instruments again, and I even actually, my left hand is still a little tight, which kind of made me sad, because I couldn't play my guitar as I'd want to. So I had a bright idea that I could play left-handed guitar. I could just switch it on the other side, like Jimi Hendrix or whatever these people. So that's what I did, and I'm learning how to play guitar on the opposite hand, and we'll see how that goes. I don't know. I'm not going to tell Berkeley I'm a singer for Berkeley, and I'm not, I could never play guitar there, but, it's going. And so, and now, I advocate for the American Heart Association, and World Stroke Day is coming up on October 29th, and that's Sunday. And so, the sad fact of it is that 1 in 6 worldwide will unfortunately suffer the devastating consequences of a stroke. That it is devastating. I mean, death and disability, it's nothing, it's something that we can prevent. We can prevent a lot by knowing the risk factors and eating a healthy diet and taking care of ourselves. In my case, none of those factors, because my stroke happened just from breaking arteries in my neck randomly. Nobody knows why. But stroke, I mean, I tell everybody, that to remember the acronym of FAST, which, is face. You watch for facial drooping, arms, have them raise their arm, and speech, speech, mumbled speech, slurred speech. And time is very important, because in a lot of strokes, and actually with the young people, I'm in a lot of support groups, I've made many, many young stroke survivor friends. That's a population that people would not think are having a stroke. So when they have a stroke, they don't even realize it themselves. They think something else is wrong. So by the time they get medical attention, it's too late. And then they maybe have, they have to, like myself, I had to spend a year in rehab. And some people, they can't speak. They lose their ability to speak, or many other cognitive abilities. I mean, I was very lucky that the type of stroke I had did not affect my cognitive abilities. But, the brain is so complex. I mean, it can happen in every part of the brain. So, the bottom line is that, things in life will happen, but it's the way we handle these things, the situations, and finding our courage and our strength to conquer, whatever life throws at us. And that's really important to remember. So that's what I have to say. And I just want to say thank you for having me here.
Valerie's is the only wedding that I've ever gone to where the bride was one of the primary singers. She not only got married, she sang at her wedding. Right, Vicki, if you can remember that? As we were there. I'll tell you, just an unbelievable story, and unbelievable, I think, an inspiration to us all. At 42 years old, to have something like that happen, and at that point, to have your type of attitude, not only to get better, to get well, but to say, you know what, I'm going to go back even bigger and stronger than ever before. I just think it's an amazing story, and I can't thank you enough. And with that, I would like to present you with the citation as well, for your dedication and inspiration again to the folks in New England, and as being our guest speaker here today. Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much. You were terrific.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I could see Valerie starting to, every time she wanted to call me speaker, you probably saw her being a little uncomfortable, because she always knew me as Bob or Bobby or something. Every time I looked over her face, I saw you delaying. What should I call me? You can call me anything you want, by the way. And it's great to see your mom here, here as well. And I have to, again, Barbara, you weren't here earlier, but thank you so much for putting all of this together. And you hear stories like Valerie just gave. It makes you realize, the importance and the role that many of you play who've had exhibits here this evening, and in healthcare, and making sure that all of you who are here, making sure that you take care of yourself. So thank you to all of the sponsors and to all of the volunteers for being here. And I know I saw our superintendent of schools, Lisa Howard, I know was here earlier. I should have mentioned her as well, and thank her for the use of this beautiful of a facility. And now it's time for the raffle. And I've got no idea what we're raffling off. Oh, the Massachusetts flag. Anyone who wants the flag? Or Barbara, what are we doing here?
It's a floral arrangement from Christopher's.
Oh, floral arrangement from Christopher's, and is it here?
Basket is right there. Or it was. With the raffle in it? It was.
You can win this beautiful non-floral arrangement. It's a beautiful basket. Unfortunately, there's no flowers in it, but you too, and it's green for Christmas and whatnot. But anyways, Valerie, I'm going to have you pick the winner, because I don't want to be unpopular here tonight. So since everybody loves you, we're going to have you do the trick, and I just want to make sure we have something to give people. Not that I don't tell Barbara. Probably someone took it and left. Johnny Ann Thompson probably thought it was her gift for being here tonight. Okay, Barbara, take your time.
It's on its way.
It's on its way? Is it? You having it delivered, you mean now? Barbara, I'm sorry, what?
We'll deliver it to the winner.
We'll deliver it to the winner. Okay. Oh, all right, you'll have to take my word for it. All right, whoever wins, please make sure you give Barbara your address. And I'll have Valerie, if you could be so kind. Okay. All right. 359-8447. All right. Hopefully you will be winning a beautiful floral arrangement from Christopher's Florist. Barbara, do you know her? Oh, good. Huh? Oh, she's the East Point person you were talking about. Okay. Good. So if you get nothing, you really don't care. Okay, just make sure I trust you. That's all right. So I got nothing to give. I trust you entirely. But in conclusion, let me sincerely, really, I thought we had some really great speakers here this evening. But most importantly, again, thank you all for coming out, and have a great rest of the evening. And well, I was going to say enjoy the weather. After the rain, maybe it'll warm up again. I don't know. But thank you all for being here.